The rain was a liar that day. It fell soft and gray, pretending to be grief when all I felt was the hot, iron grip of rage around my throat. Each droplet tapped a gentle, hypocritical rhythm on my black trench coat, the same coat I'd worn during a sandstorm in Fallujah, during a firefight in Odessa, and during a quiet, bloody extraction in Bangkok. Today, it was armor against the hypocrisy dripping from every silk-lined umbrella in the crowd. My mother's casket was a polished mahogany island in a sea of black suits and fake tears. I stood at the edge of the gathering, 15 yards from the graveside, clutching a worn leather envelope. The ink on it was my mother's handwriting, shaky, terminal, but unmistakable. For Leo, open only if Derek breaks his word. He had broken it before the dirt was even warm. I hadn't seen my older brother Derek in 4 years, not since he'd sold the family hardware store out under me for a fraction of its value and called my $5,000 severance a charity. He'd built a glass and steel monstrosity of a house on the proceeds, complete with a wine cellar and a home theater. I'd built a new identity in the shadows, a new set of skills in the blood-soaked corners of the world. When the pastor finished his hollow platitudes, Derek finally acknowledged me. His suit cost more than my motorcycle. His new wife, Tiffany, clutched a miniature poodle like a hostage and a Chanel bag like a shield. Behind them stood 2 men with no necks and dead eyes, security, or muscle, or both. Their jackets bulged in places that didn't accommodate love handles. "You," Derek said, stepping away from the casket. His voice was low and sharp as a broken bottle, carrying across the hushed crowd. He walked over, heels sinking into the wet grass until he was close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying, like rotting flowers dipped in money. "You don't get to stand here, Leo. You're not family. You're baggage. Mom's biggest mistake was coddling you while you drifted through life like a ghost." A flock of crows from a nearby oak. "You live in a storage unit and fix lawnmowers for a living. You showed up on a motorcycle, for God's sake, a rusted heap you probably found in a dumpster. You're an embarrassment to her memory. Security, escort this vagrant off the property before I call the real police and have him arrested for trespassing." The 2 necklace men moved, fast, trained. One grabbed my left arm, the other my right, fingers digging into pressure points that would make a normal man drop to his knees. I let them. I didn't tense. I didn't resist. I'd been grabbed by professionals before, men who'd meant to break bones, not just bruise pride, men in Chechen caves and Venezuelan slums. These 2 were amateurs with expensive gym memberships and no idea what real violence looked like. Instead of fighting, I pulled the leather envelope from inside my coat and tossed it onto the pile of wreaths near the grave. It landed with a soft thud against a spray of white lilies, just inches from the bronze handles of the casket. "Open it," I said, as they dragged me backward. My heels carved twin trenches in the wet soil. "After everyone leaves, you'll want to see it. Trust me on that, brother." Derek sneered, waving a dismissive hand like he was shooing a fly. "Burn it with the flowers. I don't want anything from that loser." But his hand twitched. His eyes flicked to the envelope. He was already curious. That was his flaw. The same curiosity that had made him open Mom's safe when we were kids. The same greed that had made him dig through her desk drawers after Dad died. The same obsessive need to know what others were hiding. He couldn't help himself. It was a disease. By the time they dumped me on the wet pavement outside the cemetery gates, the rain had turned real, a cold, driving sheet that soaked through my coat in seconds, plastering my hair to my forehead. The security goons stood over me for a moment, waiting to see if I'd beg or cry. I did neither. I stood up slowly, brushed off my jacket, and walked to my motorcycle. Not the junker Derek assumed, not even close. A '78 Honda CB750 I'd rebuilt myself, piece by piece, in a black site garage in Virginia. The frame was reinforced with ballistic-grade steel. The fuel tank hid a compartment. Under the custom seat was a magnetic lockbox with a biometric scanner. Inside, a burner phone with encrypted lines, a suppressed Glock 19 with a crimson trace laser and a custom trigger pull, 3 magazines of hollow points, and a folded copy of a CIA field agent's emergency passport, different name, different face in the photo, and a flash drive labeled Project Ghost. I wasn't a lawnmower mechanic, not anymore. I hadn't been for a very long time. 3 years ago, after Derek burned me and took everything, the store, the house, the family, the narrative, I had vanished into the private military circuit. Black sites in Jordan, offshore accounts in the Caymans, a new set of skills that didn't involve carburetors or cash registers. I'd run operations in 4 countries, worked for people whose names would never see a warrant, a news report, or a grave marker. I'd done things that would make Derek's fraud charges look like parking tickets. Mom knew. She'd helped me hide the truth, burning letters, lying to Derek about my phone calls, keeping a separate bank account in my real name. She was the only person in the world who knew both versions of me, the broken younger son and the ghost who walked through walls. And when she died of a heart attack last week, the same week Derek's shady construction company suddenly became solvent again after 2 years of red ink, the same week he paid off his second mortgage and bought Tiffany a new Mercedes, I'd come home to find out why. The envelope I'd tossed on her casket contained 4 things. First, a photocopy of Mom's revised will, dated 6 weeks before her death, signed by 2 witnesses and notarized by a judge. It left Derek a single dollar. Everything else, the lake house, the remaining stocks, the insurance policies, the antique jewelry, the cabin in the mountains, went to a trust in my name. She'd finally seen him for what he was, and she'd made her choice. Second, a flash drive with GPS data from her pacemaker. The log showed a normal, healthy rhythm for an 80-year-old woman until 11:47 p.m. on the night she died. Then a massive voltage spike, not a malfunction, not a natural arrhythmia, an external signal, a forced, deliberate shock. Someone had triggered her heart to stop from 50 yards away using a modified defibrillator remote that broadcast on a frequency no hospital device would ever use. Third, a photograph. Derek shaking hands with a man named Vinnie Calibri outside a steakhouse in Atlantic City 3 weeks before Mom died. Vinnie wasn't a contractor. He wasn't in construction. He was a loan shark with a side business in medical adjustments, hired muscle for hire, but the kind that didn't break knees, the kind that broke hearts, literally. He'd done the same thing to a witness in a racketeering trial 2 years ago. The FBI had been looking for a connection ever since. Fourth, a letter, Mom's handwriting, dated the day before she died. It said simply, "Leo, if you're reading this, I'm gone and Derek is responsible. Don't mourn me, avenge me, and then forgive him. He was always the weak one. You were always the strong one. I love you, Mom." I swung a leg over the motorcycle, thumbed the starter, and let the engine growl to life, a deep, throaty sound that echoed off the cemetery walls. The rain hammered my helmet visor as I pulled onto the highway. I didn't look back. I never looked back. 40 minutes later, I sat in a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, nursing black coffee in a cracked ceramic mug. The place was empty except for a sleeping cook and a waitress who'd stopped asking questions years ago. My burner phone sat on the table like a sleeping snake. It buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. Derek's voice was a strangled whisper, ragged and wet, like he'd been crying or drowning or both. "Where are you?" "Close," I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. "What's in the envelope?" A long pause. I heard him breathing fast, shallow, the sound of a man whose world had just fallen out from under him like a trapdoor. In the background, wind howled and rain hammered something metallic. He was still at the cemetery, alone. The mourners were gone. The security goons were gone. Tiffany was probably already on the phone with her divorce attorney. "How did you get this?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "The will is a forgery. Mom would never—" "She would." I cut him off, my voice flat as a grave marker. "And the pacemaker data doesn't lie. Neither does the photo. You shook hands with a killer, Derek. You paid him $40,000 to murder our mother so you could inherit a house and a bank account." "I didn't pay him to kill her." The words exploded out of him, unfiltered, raw, desperate. "The doctor said it would just scare her, a jolt, enough to put her in the hospital for a few weeks, enough to make her sign over control of the accounts while I sorted out the debt. Vinny said it was safe. He said it was reversible." I let the silence stretch. 10 seconds, 20. Outside the diner window, a police cruiser rolled past, its lights off. I watched it disappear into the rain. Then I said, very quietly, "Leo lied." Derek was crying now. I could hear it, the ugly, gulping sobs of a man who had finally realized he'd been a pawn in a game much larger than his own greed. "Leo, I didn't mean for this. You have to believe me. I was drowning. The construction company. I borrowed from Vinny to cover payroll, and then the interest ballooned and Mom refused to help me. She said I had to learn responsibility. She said she was leaving everything to you. I panicked. I just wanted a little more time." "So you killed her for it?" "I panicked." I pulled the Glock from my belt, checked the chamber for the 4th time, and tucked it back. The weight of it was familiar, almost comforting, like a handshake from an old, dangerous friend. "Here's what's going to happen, Derek. Vinny found out you skimmed from the payment you sent him. You shorted him $5,000. He doesn't like being shorted. He's already dispatched 2 men to your house. They're not coming to collect money. They're coming to silence a loose end. You have maybe 7 minutes before they arrive." A sharp intake of breath. "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching Vinny for 3 months. I have a friend in the FBI, Special Agent Maya Cross, Organized Crime Division. She's been building a RICO case against Vinny for 2 years. Your little transaction was the final piece, but the Bureau moves slow. Vinny moves fast." "What do I do?" Derek's voice cracked like a teenager's. He sounded 12 years old again, the way he did when Mom's favorite vase and blamed it on me, the way he did when Dad caught him smoking behind the garage. "Leo, please, I'm scared." "There's a silver sedan behind the chapel. Keys are under the floor mat. Don't go home. Don't call Tiffany. She's already been talking to Vinny's lawyer. She sold you out for a beach house in Malibu and a guarantee she wouldn't be charged as an accessory. Your marriage is over. Your life is over. But your heart is still beating, and I'd like it to keep it that way." Another sob. Then, "Leo, I'm sorry. I'll fix this. I'll give you half. No, everything. The house, the company, the cars, all of it. Just get me out of here. Please. You're my brother." I took a slow sip of coffee. It was bitter and perfect. You, my brother? I'm not saving you, Derek. I'm using you. What? You're going to drive to the FBI field office in Newark. You're going to walk inside and confess everything: the loan, the payment, the doctor's name, Vinny's schedule, his safe houses, his drop points. You're going to wear a wire, and you're going to help Maya put Vinny Calibri in a concrete box for the rest of his natural life. If you do that, I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you cooperated fully. You might see daylight before you're 60. And if I don't? I stood up from the diner booth, leaving a 50 on the table, more than enough for the coffee and the waitress's silence. Outside, my motorcycle waited in the rain, steam rising from the hot engine. Then Vinny's men will find you, or I will, and I'm a lot harder to bribe, a lot harder to run from, and a lot less patient than the FBI. I hung up before he could answer. I wasn't on the road to Newark. Not yet. That was for Derek. I had my own destination. Instead, I rode west toward the industrial district where Vinny Calibri ran his operations out of a fake plumbing supply warehouse. The rain had stopped by the time I arrived, leaving the asphalt slick and shiny under the orange glow of flickering streetlights. The air smelled of wet concrete, diesel, and decay. I parked 3 blocks away, killed the engine, and walked the rest on foot. My boots made no sound on the soaked pavement. I'd learned to walk like a ghost in a place called The Farm, and I'd perfected it in places that didn't appear on any map. The warehouse was a massive concrete box with rusted corrugated siding and a single loading dock. 2 guards at the front, smoking cigarettes under a yellow bug zapper light. A camera on every corner, 4 that I could see, probably 2 more I couldn't. Standard setup, incompetent but enthusiastic. I'd already disabled the rear sensor grid during a recon run 2 nights ago, a little electromagnetic interference from a device I'd bought off a Ukrainian arms dealer in Prague. The device was the size of a deck of cards and cost more than Derek's first car, worth every penny. The back door was a steel fire exit with a magnetic lock and a pressure plate. I pressed a bypass tool against the reader, a gift from a dead man in Beirut, and held my breath. The lock clicked open in 4 seconds. Inside, the air smelled of rust, cigarette smoke, old blood, and fear. The warehouse floor was empty except for a few pallets of what looked like plumbing supplies, but were probably drug shipments or stolen electronics. Stairs led up to a second-floor office with a reinforced door and a Judas window. I climbed the stairs in silence, each footstep placed with precision born of 100 prior infiltrations. My heart rate was steady, 62 beats per minute, calm as a frozen lake. Through the Judas window, I saw him. Vinny Calibri, fat, bald, wearing a gold watch that cost more than most people's houses. He was leaning back in a leather chair, feet on the desk, laughing about something on his phone. On his desk, a stack of cash wrapped in rubber bands, a stainless steel pistol, and a small black device with a collapsible antenna, the pacemaker trigger. I kicked the door open. It slammed against the wall with a sound like a gunshot. Vinny's head snapped up. His eyes went wide. His hand shot toward the pistol. I put 3 rounds from the Glock into the desk, 1 inch from his fingers, 1 inch from his phone, 1 inch from the pacemaker trigger. The suppressed shot sounded like hardcover books being slammed shut on a wooden table. "Don't," I said. He froze. Then slowly he smiled. It was the smile of a man who had stared down death before and found it wanting. "You're the brother, the baggage, the one who fixes lawnmowers. I'm the baggage that's about to put you in the ground." I stepped closer, keeping the crimson laser dot on his forehead. It trembled slightly from the adrenaline, not from fear. "You killed my mother, Vinny. You sold my brother a tool that stopped her heart, and you told him it was safe." "Your brother killed your mother. I just sold him the tool." Vinny leaned back in his chair, showing no fear, no remorse. That was his mistake. You shoot me, you're no better than him. You're no better than me. We're all killers here, Leo. That's why you're not pulling the trigger. Maybe. I reached into my coat and pulled out a second envelope, this one sealed with red wax and stamped with an FBI crest. The FBI is 12 minutes out. I already sent them the GPS coordinates, a recording of your last 3 phone calls, and a complete financial trail linking you to 14 contract killings over the past 5 years. You're finished, Vinny. The only question is whether you go out in handcuffs or a body bag. Vinny's faltered. His hand twitched toward the desk's drawer. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The only sounds were the drip of rainwater through a hole in the roof and the distant rumble of a freight train. Then Vinny's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face went pale, the color of old cheese, the color of a man who had just seen his own obituary. Outside, sirens, dozens of them, growing louder. I holstered the Glock, turned my back on him, and walked out the way I came. He didn't follow. He couldn't. I'd taken his gun, his phone, and his nerve in the same breath. Behind me, I heard him scream a sound of pure animal rage. Then the crash of his desk overturning. Then the heavy thud of his body hitting the floor as the FBI breached the front door. I didn't look back. The FBI took Vinny into custody without a single shot fired. He was found curled up behind his overturned desk, weeping, clutching the pacemaker trigger like a rosary. Special Agent Maya Cross sent me a text an hour later. Got him. Full confession in under 20 minutes. Your brother's at the Newark office. He's singing like a canary. Derek turned himself in 3 hours after I hung up, shaking and crying, wearing the same expensive suit he'd worn to the funeral. He'd driven the silver sedan straight to the FBI building, walked through the revolving doors, and collapsed at the front desk, babbling about murder and loan sharks and a brother who'd saved his life. The doctor who'd modified the pacemaker was picked up at JFK, trying to fly to Dubai with a suitcase full of cash and a one-way ticket. He didn't even make it through security. I watched it all from a rooftop across the street from the Federal Building, binoculars in one hand, a protein bar in the other. When the last patrol car left and the last reporter packed up her camera, I climbed down, straddled my motorcycle, and rode east toward the ocean, toward a new passport and a new name, toward a life that didn't include funerals or brothers or loan sharks. My phone buzzed one last time as I hit the highway. A text from an unknown number, but I knew who it was. The lake house is yours. Mom's will was real. I signed over the deed this morning before I turned myself in. I also put the cabin in your name, and the jewelry, and everything else. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but it's yours. All of it. D. I read it twice, then I deleted it. The rain started again as I crossed the state line, a soft, steady drizzle that washed the road clean. I rode into it, with the Glock on my hip, the flash drive in my pocket, and the open road ahead. My brother had kicked me out of Mom's funeral, called me baggage, and tried to bury me in his version of the truth. He thought I was a failure, a drifter, a ghost who didn't matter. He thought the envelope I left behind was just a bitter farewell. But in the end, that envelope didn't just save his life. It ended a killer's reign. It put a corrupt doctor in chains. It gave a dead woman the justice she deserved. And it reminded everyone watching that the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, the so-called baggage, they're often the most dangerous people in the room. The rain stopped. The moon broke through the clouds. I twisted the throttle and disappeared into the night. The baggage had teeth. and the teeth were still sharp.